Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. It's October, and by that I mean it really is October. And I didn't really know what to do for this week's video because honestly, I've been having a really hard time with a lot of stuff, but I will not bore you with those personal things, you know. So I figured I would do this tag that I came up with that I did once, I think maybe twice actually on my channel before, called Decks I'm Using Now and Why. And so since this is the best month of the year, I have some decks to show you. Now, you know, probably if have been around this side of YouTube long enough, you know that I don't have a big collection and I don't intend to have a big collection at this point. So actually, most of these decks that I will show you, or most of the decks that I show you in videos in which I show decks, will be decks that I use anyway, are in actual frequent use. So in order to attempt to not be too predictable, I will show you a deck that I haven't used in a long time. It's Le Tarot de Marseille par Paul K. So this is misnamed because it's in fact not a Marseille tarot, it's a pip deck. The pips are not arranged in the traditional Marseille way, and the artist is Polka. Par means by, and Polka is the artist. So that is obviously a stage name or an artist name, but this is a box that I made for it because, and this is the other extra card, quite beautiful, and I figured I would never use the extra card anyway, and so I just stuck it onto the box just like this one. I really love that. I needed to make a new box for this deck because this is a deck that I backed with the thickest backing paper ever. That was, yeah, wasn't exactly my choice, but it's just how it happened. And it no longer fit into the box. But I actually really like the result because I also edged it in this blood red. The backs are now this matte black. Feels pretty good. And the red, actually, I deliberately exaggerated this when I noticed it was happening by itself, made sure that the red would bleed onto the front of the cards. And so that actually, no pun intended, looks like blood. And it fits this deck so well because what we see in this deck, which is, quite, I wouldn't call it dark necessarily, although the coloration is quite dark, but there are some gruesome things. Here we have the Two of Swords, and these are not intestines or intestines, I don't know how to say that. They are actually supposed to represent umbilical cords, which to me really fits very well with what I'm actually looking for. It's the connection to source, to the universe, to deity, to outside of myself forces. And so the umbilical cord obviously comes from the navel, or used to be attached to the navel. And to me, the navel is that point in the tree of life which would represent Tiferet, right? That would be the center point, and Tiferet is actually the middle point of the tarot sequence. It's the number 6. We just passed the bridge of the 5 and then reached the 6, and the 6 is that moment between man and God, and it actually coming together, finding the humanity in God and finding the godliness in man. So that was a little bit of a philosophical thing, but it makes sense to me that this is a deck that I'm working with in the month of October. I haven't really delved into this deck in the past, but I really like it. It's full of humor and beautiful, rich, deep, dark colors. The artwork is exquisite. It's just, there's so much detail. And in every pip card, no matter how abstract they are, there's so much to see, so much to find in here. So see, this is obviously supposed to be blood. It definitely looks more like blood than red wine, but it doesn't look scary or creepy to me. It is a creepy-ish deck, but it isn't, negative. It's actually, I get a lot of positive messages from this deck. This is the art style in the majors, La Force, strength. And I have in the past described this deck as a cold deck, as in I feel like the people in the deck, in this world, this realm that this deck represents or shows us, the reader, don't actually know each other. And they don't care for one another. They don't care to know each other. They're a little bit cold, and also actually really just all of the colors in the faces, they're all quite gray. You see? So this isn't gory to me. This is funny. And there's still a serious message that you can get from this, right? Maybe you lose your head whilst following your heart. That actually was reason number one, the fact that all of these people look pissed off and annoyed at one another, smirky, and they look cold, like they don't actually have a relationship. And this is the opposite of what I usually, of course, look for in a tarot deck. My favorite tarot deck, which is coming up, obviously, I can't stay away from it. What are you gonna do? What do you want from me? My favorite deck is all about feeling welcome and all of these creatures welcoming me and accepting one another and knowing one another and being very warm and happy and interactive with one another. Whereas this one, which you could see as a similar creepy style deck, although it definitely has a voice of its own, has the opposite effect. There's Wednesday Addams losing her head. Heads will roll, guys. But it's kind of interesting that I felt like this flaw almost in this tarot deck, that that I get the feeling that all of these people are just a little bit cold, and like Queen of Pentacles, even the Queen of Pentacles, which is supposed to be the mother archetype, is giving me the side eye. That this flaw became the biggest reason why I wanted to work with this deck in the month of October, and maybe the month after that as well, because honestly, it also, this color palette also gives me Christmas vibes. But I'll be transparent about this. The reason I need to work with a deck of cold people is because the message of the tarot telling me that I need to connect to people and I want to connect to people, and on the good days I do, but there are just many bad days. And to tell you the truth, I have a really hard time connecting to other people at the moment. Connecting to people, connecting to the state of the world. Just doesn't make sense. Things are happening that I do not agree with. I never want to get political or whatever on my channel, but just the all-round narrative, right, that we've been encountering, it feels to me as if a lot of people are kind of forgetting about the human aspect of everyone, of the humanity, and how do we connect? How do we unite and try as much as possible to bring equality? So without getting into too much detail because I just can't. um, I just don't want us to be divided. I'm just going to leave it at that for today. And this deck is actually confronting me with a bunch of cold people. And I know I'm not alone in this, but how I have been experiencing the majority of people around, just around, floating about in space. And so to basically give myself this lesson of finding the warmth and understanding with those people. Yes? Okay. That was a whole bunch of wow. Let's move on to my favorite deck. Triomphe della Luna Paradoxical. This is, of course, since it is my favorite deck, and a deck that is featured all the time on my channel. This is a deck I work with all the time. It's of course nothing new for me to then do a deep dive with it or pick it up more in the month of October or in the darker months, because this is the deck where I just feel most at home. I love the Marseille pips. I love the non-traditional quartz. I love the, where are they? Oh, my favorite card. I love the majors. Just absolutely, absolutely beautiful. And there is definite warmth in this deck for me. So I'd say this is like the counter or the balancing act, even though this is a deck that I definitely feel works well with doing shadow work. I think every deck has that potential. Every deck is usable for shadow work. And I think in many tarot readings, whether we go looking for anything shadow or ego or whatever or not, a lot of the times shadows will pop up. This is kind of the hug deck. It's not exactly a hug deck because it's just the one that fits me the best, but I feel like I'm counterbalancing these two, right? So I'm giving myself a challenge to work with a deck that I haven't worked with in a really long time. And it's really actually there to challenge me in my view of the world and to actually really try to get myself out of this shit feeling and try to connect, actually connect. And then there's this deck that's just always there for me anyway, to make me feel welcome again. So you know what? Maybe it'll be interesting if I start using these two decks together to maybe see what different messages I get or how they maybe overlap, because there might be a blind spot there for the Polka Tarot. So just in case you didn't know, this is the Triomphe della Luna Paradoxical by Patrick Valenza. This is a coloration that is, I think, out of print, but he still has beautiful and absolutely tempting, I think, blue and purple coloration of this paradoxical deck, and the original, the classic one, up on Deviant Moon. 2 more decks to go and I need a drink, so this is a good time for me to have a little break. So go ahead and get yourself a beverage, but don't leave. I will see you after the break for the B-side. And we're back. And the next deck I want to show you is the Wildwood. So look, I have the old version with the big copyright and the shiny glossy cardstock. apparently there's a new version. If these qualities are the reason why you didn't get this deck, but you are interested in a more nature-based deck, this deck actually follows the Wheel of the Year. It's not Rider-Waite-Smith or any other system that I know. It's really its own system, but you can still read it as freely as you like. Then, you know, it's something to look into, because it's a deck that I use a lot, and not just in the darker months, not just in autumn, not just in winter, but really in every season. And you can tell that there is actually also every season in this deck. So here we have the Long Man, but we have all 4 seasons together with all 4 elements. And in this deck, the cups are vessels, wands are bows, swords are arrows, and the pentacles are stones. This is still, even though every season is depicted, still every time I read with this deck, I hold this deck, I talk about this deck, I smell this deck, I describe the Wildwood Tarot as my autumn rainy day deck. And that is just what it gives me. And so, since fall is all of a sudden so much upon us in the Netherlands, and the light has just kind of gone in the span of one day. I love this card. This is, of course, a deck I am gravitating towards. If you want to know more about how I feel about this deck, I recommend you check out my videos about my tarot collection, because I feel like in that video I was able to properly explain why I'm such a fan of this deck and why it's such a nice, healing, magical tool in my tarot collection. It's obviously nature-based, and so it also very much brings us, the reader, into a world that is magical and in touch with the earth. This is definitely an earth deck, and in touch with the cycles of nature. Really just, honestly, a breath of fresh air, which is also something I need. It's not necessarily escapism, escaping into this other world that doesn't really exist. I mean, obviously we get mythical creatures, assuming I can call this mythical, but it's first and foremost connecting me to an inner knowing, truth, calm, just grounded energy, and one that is quiet, one that is still, one that is comfortable in the stillness, comfortable in alone time, comfortable in just that bubble that I feel I need when I reach for this deck. So obviously, I read with it in the darker months. Wildwood Tarot. I really like it. And I think I have read the guidebook front to back twice now. Yeah, I read tarot guidebooks as novels, just as books, often front to back. Next deck, and the last deck. This is no surprise, but Halloween Tarot. This is such a guilty pleasure that I'm not ashamed to admit. I've done all my VIP Lounge Patreon readings with this deck for the month of October. Really enjoyed doing that, and the card that I got for myself was the Knight of Pumpkins. Isn't that cute? It's actually, of course, the Knight of Pentacles. So this is the fiery part of Earth. And I really like that, because it's just that message that I feel I need. Like, I don't want to give up. I need to keep the fire going. I need to have that flame, you know, still the passion and the energy and the life force and all of that going. And at the same time, I need to be grounded and really in the now to not lose perspective. So that was already just a great message that I got from this deck for this month. And so let's look through it. So obviously this, I edged it in black, but also I went totally crazy and colored in the edges front and back. Took forever. Plus it is obviously kind of showing signs of wear, but I don't care. I made a rhyme there. This is so silly. Okay, I really like the Halloween tarot because it's kind of Rider-Waite-Smith based. Then again, it's not. And I always forget to, I think, forget to explain one of the biggest reasons why I like this deck. It's actually because of the pips. Come on, a good example. Well, just look at this. Cute card. Two of Ghosts. Obviously, in the Rider-Waite-Smith, these two ghosts are two cups, inanimate objects. In this deck, every pip, every suit, the cups, swords, wands, pentacles, become alive. They get a face. The cups become ghosts. And oh, just look at this Temperance. Witch at work. The bats, look at this 10 of bats. It's the 10 of swords, you know, with the 10 swords sticking out of the body. And now it's a woman, I think she is underneath some sort of veil, and there are 10 bats flying in the air. And these might still be just her worries. And they just, it feels like, you know what bats do? They kind of hang out at one place altogether before they move away. That's what it feels like. There's just so much information that we can get out of just that. Everything becomes magical and everything becomes possible, and everything gets just this twist that makes it deep and different enough from the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith. Well, a lot of the majors are very different from Rider-Waite-Smith, but the pips, I'd say, are a Rider-Waite-Smith clone. But then see how different this card feels, the Four of Cups. Now with the Four of Ghosts, we get this person is no longer alone. There isn't just a face in the moon and a cat, black cat in every card, which is very nice to, you know, like move through. I feel like the black cat in this deck actually is the Fool and is visiting every energy, every archetype. But here, the person isn't alone. It's accompanied by these four ghosts, whether this person wants that or not, but it gives a new perspective of these might be just suggestions or ideas that you're not open to, that you don't accept, or they are your ghost thoughts or ghost feelings that actually stand in the way of you feeling good. I don't know, Four of Cups. Oh, here, Eight of Imps. No wands in sight, but this is supposed to be Eight of Wands. And I really like this depiction because it's the wands have become imps. They have become little winged satire demon creatures. Very sweet. So, obviously Halloween Tarot, and as Kelly Bear says, it is not a novelty deck, at least not to me. It's cute and kitschy, but the art style actually holds its own, and there is a deeper message that we can get from these cards, even if it's just there's an overload of cuteness. And yeah, the color palette is all very purple, orange, mostly purple and orange. This is definitely a deck I enjoy working with. Let's see if I actually am able to keep this up, to actually stay away from my Rider-Waite-Smith Centennial and adopt this one for the month of October, at least until Samhain, obviously, as my Rider-Waite-Smith for the month. I have Marseille, Rider-Waite-Smith-ish, Pip deck, and complete own system. So no Thoth for me this month. Let's see how that turns out. Yeah, I think it will be a nice journey with this deck especially. The one that's on the forefront out of all of these 4 decks is definitely the Polka, just because it's such a weirdo and I haven't worked with it nearly as much as I've worked with all the other ones. Obviously the Halloween tarot, or obviously, for me obviously, I just use it in maybe September and October, and then it goes back on the shelf, but then I always find it again the next year. I haven't had it for that long though, but yeah, I do just find it again when it's time. This one is the one that has the priority for me. I hope you enjoyed this. Please feel free to let me know what you think in the comments, obviously, but also do a VR, why not? I think it is decks I'm using now and why. It will be obviously the title of the video. So go ahead and do that. Let me know if you are using any of these 4 decks or maybe not, and then why. I am interested in this, and obviously I put the emphasis on Halloween, the fact that this in October we have Halloween, we have Samhain, but the biggest reasons why I find this tag interesting, or this conversation interesting, is to see why we gravitate towards certain decks, because it really is transparent and almost like a reading of its own of what it is we need. And that really makes us understand ourselves and our needs at the moment a little bit better. I mean, when it hit me that I needed to work with the Polka for October, it just made sense with my current state of mind. Cross your fingers for me, because I'm going to be working with a whole bunch of cold people. Anyway, if this is your first time here, please let me know so I can properly welcome you to this online space. Leave a like if you like this video. Do a VR if you want, or let me know your thoughts, and I will see you all in the next one. Thank you so much for being here.